Perfect. Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the webinar where we will be discussing how to unlock 3x at least sales growth with AI coaching. Today, I have Sai, the co-founder and CEO of Hyperbound. And based on his description, Sai is pretty passionate about startups, from the Hyperbound for sure, and also the convergence of AI with sales. And he's on a mission to build the next generation of sales excellence, conversational intelligence tools at Hyperbound. Okay, Sai, welcome again. Thanks for accepting this. We'll have a lot of fruitful discussion points about especially sales coaching and discovery calls. But let's start with you telling us what Hyperbound does.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Barak, for the great intro. Really happy to be here and glad all of you guys were able to make it out to the webinar. So quick intro on myself. My name is Sriharsha. You guys can all call me Sai if you'd like. I am the co-founder and CEO here at Hyperbound. So quick overview for those of you that have never heard of Hyperbound before, if you're not on our website already, go ahead. It's hyperbound.ai. But what we do is, so if you're familiar with role playing, we basically automate role playing on our platform. So we have an AI that your salespeople can practice doing cold calls with, or warm calls, or discovery calls, gatekeeper calls, any type of sales call we can simulate on our platform so that your sales reps can basically practice in a safe environment rather than on real prospects. So that's what Hyperbound does. But I'm super excited to talk discovery today, Barak. I think we've got a great agenda planned, and excited.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, thanks for the rundown. And yeah, feel free to check it out, guys. So we will discuss, I think, the origins of the like coaching aspect, like the offline coaching aspect. So, Sai, why do you think people should practice, and how did this thing, basically the practicing, offline practicing thingy, become as some sort of notion right now in the market? Why do you think this happened?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of triggers that have led to like changes in the way especially B2B SaaS companies are operating these days, right? First of all, it starts with the pandemic, right? The pandemic really, really changed the way everyone is approaching their sales process, how you actually work together as a team. Right now, most sales reps today are fully remote, right? They're sitting in their bedrooms cold calling all day long. And there's this notion of separation, right? And there's this notion of collaborative learning that's been lost due to the pandemic, right? So essentially what we found is that sales teams are growing rapidly, and leaders are starting to lose visibility into what their team is doing day to day, right?
Absolutely.
And as a result, they're not able to really focus on like where to coach, how to improve their reps. And I think that's a big part of what led to Hyperbound, as well as Spiky, really coming into the light right now, because this is top of mind for everyone. They want their reps to ace the phones, right?
Absolutely, man. I think sorry to cut you off, but we were discussing that in person too. We believe sales coaching is seriously underserved. There's no effective coaching platform, and everything is based on after the fact most of the time.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned, they don't have like a safe environment to practice. Let's say I want to spare 2 hours every day so I can nail down my phone conversation pitch when I'm like calling the customer. And there's like an excitement factor. There's a lot of factors around like this business. Actually, being a sales rep, doing a cold call is, I think, crazy hard. Seriously, kudos to all those
Very
people.
hard. It's very hard. It comes down to confidence, right? Like for the longest time, like the answer to more conversion, higher conversion, was literally just more dials, more emails, right? If the numbers go up, if the activity metrics go up, we'll see the results, right? But the thing is, after doing that for like the last year, every company is starting to realize that it's not working, right? Not like the way it used to. And so
Yeah.
the only way to really move forward now is you have to upskill the people you already have, right? It's not about like making more dials or getting more people in. It's about upskilling who you already have and really, really getting your sales team to another level.
Absolutely. And I think based on what you just said, I'm seeing here a trend shifting from quantity to quality.
Yeah.
And a lot of, I think, sales coaching or maybe the sales domain was so based on number of calls you made it instead of number of quality calls you made it.
Yeah.
And from here, I actually want to connect into the qualification process, which is the fundamental building block of discovery call, right? So we want to qualify people early, or we want to disqualify them early, which wasn't a huge, which wasn't a
Yeah.
fact, I think, a year or 2 years back. So,
No, sell to everyone and everyone. Right.
absolutely, which created a lot of like AEs or account executives, let's say, had like filled out quotas, but then 2 weeks before the quarter, everyone is like, hey, I can't hit my quota. What am I gonna do? There
Yeah.
is a lot of like these type of panic moments that I'm also hearing from revenue leaders, because they're like, oh, my AEs didn't tell me that they never discussed legal process. I thought everything was okay. Because you mentioned a great point, and I'm gonna give the mic you back. But in terms of number of meetings salespeople are doing, it's almost 3.2 times more than pre-COVID era right now. 3.2x. Everyone is swamped. Everyone is doing these meetings, but like, are they doing the right thing? So those are basically the questions we're gonna dive in more. Before that, can you tell us, like, what is a discovery call? Maybe let's start from there. What is a discovery call? What is this qualification thingy? What are sales playbooks? Like, tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely great segue into this topic, right? Discovery call. So, the way I look at it is discovery is less so discovery is less about finding someone that fits your ICP and more about disqualifying someone that doesn't. Right. I think that's the number one shift that most reps have the hardest time getting to, right? Because when you're on a call with a prospect, right, they just came in the door, they showed interest, they booked a demo with you, they come in, right? They are excited. And you as a rep, that you want that customer, right? You want to dial in that excitement. You want to be able to get them across the line. But I think it takes a really experienced rep to understand that not every prospect is going to become a customer. Not every prospect is going to be a good customer, right? And so defining good is the hardest part about discovery in the first place, right? We found that most of the clients that we work with, they often don't even know what good looks like,
Yeah.
right? So it usually starts with just like, let's go look at what your top performers are doing. Let's see, like, what are the types of questions that they're asking on these discovery calls. Let's actually understand how are these reps able to dive deeper into the pain points that the customer is facing, right? It's never about the pitch, it's about the pain points that you reveal, right? You got to get the customer thinking about the problem and get them in that headspace. And then when you pitch, the customer is already thinking about all their problems and it just falls right in. Your solution just falls right into place. Now I think that's when people say discovery, that's what they're talking about, right? That technique of being able to really dive deep, dissect, and understand the customer's needs. That is a skill that's only comes with hours and hours and probably years of experience, right? It's something that I'm also learning as I
Yeah,
do.
absolutely. No, I mean, like, one interesting thing here, Sai and also Atul, you guys are also coming from engineering backgrounds, right? Same as me. So we ended up in the sales domain, which was also very hard for me to learn all these stuff, how
Yeah.
to ask these questions. Like, we are all so passionate about, let's say, showing the product, because we are kind of assuming, oh, okay, I know his problem because he's a VP of sales in this company, right? So he's potentially having these problems. So the biggest problem, like you mentioned, so a lot of times instead of listening, we are mainly like, going into, assumptions. But most of the times people want to be heard. So you should ask right questions. You should understand their pain points, problems, and surface that. That's, I think, what best reps we've been also seeing across our customers.
Mm.
They keep saying the same thing. If the qualification is the top of the funnel, then there's like actually like one step before is like lead gen, let's say. But if you don't qualify these people in the right way or disqualify them, let's put it that way, so then you end up like stall opportunities in your pipeline. You think that these are good customer for you. You keep sending emails, you keep sending gifts, like LinkedIn messages. You are also doing like multi-threading approach. So there is basically a lot going on there.
And Barak, I
And
wanted to
go
ask,
ahead.
like, you've probably done, hundreds of these discovery calls at this point, if not thousands of them, right? From your experience, what do you think is, how do you know what questions to ask at any given point, right? Like when a customer comes in, I'm sure every customer, there are some questions that are the same, some questions are unique to each customer, but, first of all, like, how do you like change the conversation, take command of it, and then be able to ask the right questions at the right
That's
time?
a great question because I think there's a term that I keep using. It's like being in the moment, like being in the meeting type of stuff. Like actually, it's funny. I was like talking to a startup. I was in a mentoring session, like maybe an hour back. So they asked the exact same question. They said, like, we start talking to customer, right? They are trying to do customer discovery right now, and then
Yeah.
they said, like, customer is taking discussion to somewhere else. It happens in the sales calls. Like, you try to understand their, let's say, coaching strategies, then they start talking about, hey, my RevOps people have this problem, so they're going somewhere else. How do you kind of um, build the skill? First of all, this is a very dynamic process. It never ends, in my opinion. There are
Yeah.
like frameworks, and people call them also playbooks, right? The most famous ones are, I guess, like BAND, like basically budget, authority, need, and timeline discussion. Then we have MEDIC, MEDPIC, and it gets fancier in the enterprise level for sure. So people
Yeah.
kind of establish these 70, 80% complete baselines for you. So if you don't ask about budget, I mean, ideally, it's going to be so hard for you to sell once you send that invoice or once you're close to that. So these type of playbooks, I think the first baseline. So you can find them online. There's a lot of resources. But the second thing is actually very connected to what we did at Spiky. So we help people navigate these customer conversations in real time because our biggest pain point coming from our customers, okay, after the fact, I have these reports, whatever, but how do I make sure I'm talking the right things in the meeting? Let's say there's an objection coming. How am I going to handle that? Or there's this budget question I need to ask in that way, but I forgot what am I going to ask, and I'm going to panic, and I'm not going to basically make it happen because you
Yeah.
got the first meeting. Like you
Yeah.
got that cold call stage, you got the first meeting. How am I going to nail this? So that's
Yeah.
basically where definitely Spiky started solving our own problem with the real-time tips, like when you're in the meeting. And
Mhm.
it's the interesting thing is like comes back to Hyperbound. That's what I think there's this good synergy here. Those people seriously need to practice a lot. And it's like, I think customer calls are not where you should practice because you call 100 times, you get one meeting.
Yeah.
You
That's
can't waste that.
gotta ace that one meeting. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's where I think they need some safe environment, like
Yeah.
to practice and hone in those skills. And
Yeah.
then let's say they develop these winning skills and we help them enforce them in real time because you're a human being. We're going to make errors and things will change. Things are dynamic. If we can understand that in real time and guide you to the real direction, and you already guide you to the real direction with Spiky, and you already kind of prepare yourself with Hyperbound, you're kind of like, like super salesperson. That's what I was feeling. So that's, I think, the feedback loop there.
I think the word that you ended with there is actually perfect. It's the feedback loop, right? I think that's what the Hyperbound plus Spiky pipeline really does. It's like completing that feedback loop, right? And I wanted to talk about specifically, you mentioned like there are reps, like some of your customers where reps are on these calls, they forget how to handle a specific objection, or they forget how to respond to positioning something, right? Or maybe a competitor is brought up and then the rep is like, ah, shoot, how I forgot how the competitor compares here, right? And they need something on the spot, and that's exactly what Spiky really helps with, right? So
That correct.
I think part of what we've found with our customers as well is similar problems, right? But the deeper thing that we've noticed is that these reps don't actually they don't have this content in the back of their pocket in the first place, right? And it's like the question that I ask all the time is, okay, then why are you even on this call if you don't remember how to handle that objection in the first place, right? Because sales is all about it's all about the prep. It's all about preparing, really knowing your stuff, like being able to take command of the message, right? And when you're talking about that, it's like tons of reps, repetition, practice. That's what you need to get there. It needs to be ingrained and become second nature, right, in your head.
Absolutely.
And so
No,
I think that's a big focus for us at Hyperbound, because it's like, okay, well, why are you even jumping on the call if you don't know how to handle that objection?
uh,
You should practice that objection 1,000 times on Hyperbound before you jumped on that call.
again, great point. And I think it boils down to the same discussion point around the quantity mindset in the sales domain for many years.
Yeah.
Because there's like, on average, an SDR takes 3 months to ramp up.
Yeah.
Like, these are human beings, let's accept, and their job is so hard.
Yeah.
And what company wants is, I want you to ramp up faster.
Yeah.
So then the question is, like, how are you helping me, right? Most of the times, I have like an interesting take here. Like, the churn rate in SDRs and account executives in this domain is pretty high. A lot of
Mm,
people complain about it. They're
yeah.
like, they always have like, we are hiring sales, we are hiring sales. All right, but the problem is, you're churning a lot of people because your approach is more like spray and pray. Instead of increasing the quality of these people, you keep saying, oh, I'm going to bring someone random. And if they kind of statistically better than my team, they're closing more deals, I'm going to eliminate the others. Whereas
Yeah.
I think from a company perspective, if you give them the right environment, like prep environment, like Hyperbond, so they can like kind of improve themselves, or
Yeah.
like coaching feedbacks in real time, after the fact analysis, insights, email generation. So they need that tool stack. They need help from you. That's
Yeah.
how I think coaching gets completed. A
Yeah.
lot of managers think that's an SDR problem, but sometimes it's a coaching problem from the leadership team.
I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, managers are supposed to be listening to calls. They're supposed to be coaching their reps, but it just always falls to the bottom of the barrel because there's this notion of they'll just figure it out. They just need to jump on enough calls, they'll figure it out, right? But I think that's a very naive mindset. That's a very like 2020 mindset of like, we had all the leads in the world, right? Now
Absolutely.
it's not, that mindset doesn't fly anymore. That's the problem. There's way more competition. B2B SaaS, this is the most competitive environment I have seen in B2B SaaS ever.
Right.
Right. And what I'm also seeing is like every product out there is becoming a platform product. Right. And so companies are building like 20, 30, 40 different products, trying to sell them all, package them together. That also means that every sales rep needs to understand all 40 products. They need to understand all the ways to package that product. Right. And it's like, how is one person supposed to, memorize and understand all of this stuff? Right. And
It's
I think that's also
big.
something, yeah, Spiky is a huge like game changer in that
Yeah.
scenario. Yeah.
I mean, I definitely understand where you're coming from. Like, everyone is kind of so busy, and we're trying to make their lives busier because, like you mentioned, 20, 30 products. Instead, I think people want flexibility, especially salespeople. Let's say I'm using X, just integrate there, do one thing really good,
Yeah.
and be super easy to use it. So everyone wants this like super easy to use thingy. And I think like you guys launched this competition like few months back, like cold calling competition, right? So I think it
Yeah.
was pretty easy, pretty fun. So I want to understand, what happened there. What are some, key metrics, indicators that you guys that you guys extracted there? What was the successful people were doing? Like, do you want to like chat a bit about, what were some highlights or insights from that,
Yeah, for sure.
event?
So that competition, so for the folks in the room that haven't really heard about our competition before, Hyperbound, we like to throw cold calling competitions every once in a while. And they're basically these global cold calling competitions where we put out a bot that your reps can basically just cold call, and there's a global leaderboard, and then we have prizes for the winners. It's a really fun, friendly competition, right? And so we ran one of those recently, and we had over 500 participants around the world participate. It was great. We had like, I think 15 people that tied for first place. So yeah, people, it was getting dicey. And I think the biggest learning from all of this was, if you look at the top 15 people that made it to the top, you'll notice a pattern. Their first call compared to their last call, from a scorecard and evaluation perspective, is so different, right? Like on that
Mhm.
first call, like they're just struggling, they're still trying to figure out like how to do this call. Then by like the 15th or 20th call, you see them making massive improvements on every part of the call, right? Not just the intro, but also the discovery, like being able to like the permission-based opener, right? All of these things, good things that go into a cold call, you see them like fixing each of those things. It's a beautiful thing to watch because you're like, in a matter of just like a couple of days, 2 to 3 days, this rep from went from not even being able to make a cold call to just now mastering that in 2 to 3 days, right? And guess what? In that process, they've burned zero leads,
Yeah,
right? And I think that's a crazy part about the technology today is just like now we actually have access to stuff like this where you don't have to go burn prospects. You can go do this in a safe environment like we've been talking about. But I think that was my biggest revelation is Hyperbound does help reps improve. I'm literally seeing it in front of me, and it's a beautiful thing to watch.
that is I think, one of the most beautiful feelings ever, right? People come and say, or you saw them improve. Like, I think it is insanely powerful because you're like immediately seeing the value and people are like happy, people talk about it, and you're kind of like understanding, like receiving those type of, I think, I don't know, comments, testimonials, and like realizing that. And sometimes like people talk about it without realizing you're in the room or like without knowing about you actually. Like, so the brand there and the value you guys are bringing, it's definitely, you know, something very, very obvious we've been like seeing. And this competition went viral, and a lot of people, like you mentioned, I was like looking at the scores, like, oh, 99, and there was like one guy with 100 or something, like
It's crazy.
everything, they nailed everything.
Yeah, it's going down to the wire, and it just came down to who nailed every aspect of that call.
Yeah,
And people took it very, very seriously, and it was very cool to watch.
that's what I
Yeah,
was. Go ahead.
I wanted to ask you about Spiky as well, right? Like,
Mhm.
obviously, like a lot of people have been using call recorders for the last couple of years, and particularly like I've talked to many of our customers today, for example, use Gong or Chorus.
Yeah,
They're using all the usual tools. How does Spiky how does Spiky differ from these tools? Like, what is the game changing piece here that these customers are missing from Gong, Chorus, and of the like?
I love this question because that's if I would create a bot in terms of objection handling, and that would be about like Gong, Chorus, like these type of legacy players. First of all, these companies, they created the market, so they're the first lenders. So like 8 years back, so call recording wasn't a thing,
Yeah.
and they created the market. So the interesting thing about the market right now is when everything became super accessible and with all the AI, let's say open AI revolution, as well as like other big AI companies, right now everyone is being able to record stuff. Like we have Zoom AI companion or something like that, maybe AI friend. Never mind. So we have like recorders everywhere, or note taker apps. There's probably more than 500 right now that I cannot keep track of. And like with these big companies, like you mentioned, Gong or Chorus, so we found out in our biggest companies or biggest customers, like on average, 2 to 3% of these after the fact reports are ever reviewed, which is an insane statistics because it boils down to the same point. Coaches supposed to listen these calls because the number of calls that they supposed to listen, like it wasn't a minimal amount. It wasn't that crazy. So it is designed for these managers to listen these meetings and give drop commands. I met like a lot of managers. I remember my first time when I was in New York City, there was a manager. I was kind of overlooked his phone and he was listening Gong recordings. I was like, what is he doing? Why would I do that? So they are designed for you to listen these recordings when you have time. So then the
Yeah.
problem is, I don't have time. I have 20 sales reps. What am I gonna do? Each of them doing on average like 30 calls
Yeah.
every like week, which makes 600 calls.
Yeah.
If I randomly select five of them,
For calls, right? Like, and you can't even blame them because it's just
there's no blame. You're right.
yeah.
There's no blame to them, and they're kind of busy. Like we are trying to make their job easier. So what we're trying to do is like more automated version on top of all the recording tools that they can use down the line. and telling you, hey, this maybe call requires more coaching because of XYZ reason. We score them automatically. And then let's say based on some suggestions, seems like Brock was really good in terms of budget discussion, but he missed legal process discussion. So we then enforced that in real time for his next meeting or next customer call, saying, Brock, you missed budget. You did a great job in the budget, but seems like you're missing this legal process or decision-making discussions. So you got to focus on there too, because you are missing that. So we're kind of trying to be their manager, whispering their ears when they are trying to pitch people, or when they are trying to talk to customer, or trying to tell, hey, Brock, you're speaking too fast, man. Chill out, or maybe like wait a little bit. So we are trying to do a lot of like feedback so they can like learn to, because I know you guys are also measuring like talk time, listen time, the positive language usage, etc. So I saw like in those metrics, so listen time is a pretty big stuff. People keep like interfering, people keep doing those stuff. So that's basically how we are handling the objections, and it's so easy.
I think what you're really getting at, Barak, from hearing this is like the gongs and the choruses of the world weren't built for coaching.
Yes.
Right? They were built for people to listen to the calls and do the coaching. Right. And the thing is, now with the latest revolution of all these AI tools and like AI becoming this big thing that's actually like making like these tools possible, we're actually able to for the first time like even start to automate that coaching piece as well, which was still manual and back in the day, right? So it's going to take time, but I think we're
definitely going there
in the right direction.
I have one question for you since you opened the can of worms. So we have a time to go there, like in terms of educating the market, educating the leaders, because it's hard, right? So right now everyone is talking about AI, but one thing that I'm seeing is not everyone is knowledgeable or enough. They don't have enough knowledge.
Yep.
So what are some biggest hurdles, maybe challenges you guys are coming across when you're trying to tell your story, tell the value prop of Hyperbound? So, and using that, I want to also make some lessons for audience there. But let's start with the challenges you guys are seeing, like objections. So how do you handle those?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, for one, I mean, we build bots in Hyperbound for sure. We definitely dogfood our own product a lot. We practice on it a lot. We have to. I mean, I'm not. I started doing sales like not pretty recently. Right? I was an engineer for most of my career, so a lot of my learning came through just practicing my own skills. But I mean, it's a great question, and I think the biggest thing that we run into with customers when we're educating them on the stuff and we're selling Hyperbound is just ROI, right? It's like people, like many sales leaders that are very metric driven, like you have to make more calls or you have to send more dials, more emails, right? Those types of leaders just have a hard time wrapping their head around the impact of coaching and training and enablement, right? Because it feels like this black box where I invest money into it, right? And I'm supposed to have a bunch of better reps that come out the other side, and I'm supposed to see the results probably 6 months later or a year later, right? So the question is always like, how can I trust that your product will get my reps there, right?
Absolutely.
That's the biggest hurdle that we have to get over. And so we keep it pretty simple. We're like, if you don't believe in coaching and enabling your reps, that's a disqualification for us.
Yes, that is actually, I love this. If you don't believe that, I mean, it's so hard to
I'm not going to
value.
And see, this is the beauty about discovery, right? Like for every audience, like this is exactly how my calls go. Like I will ask them, like, do you believe that coaching and enabling your reps more will improve your reps long term? Right. And some people, as soon as they show hesitation, I'm like, well, sounds like this might not be a great fit right now. Right. We can always circle back later. Sounds like Gong or whatever you're using right now is doing it. Right. Or your managers, sounds like your managers are coaching your reps and you guys are doing fine, which is totally fine. And so I think that's the hard part. And when I first started Hyperbound, that wasn't as easy for me, right? Like when a customer would say that, I would start responding back. I would start like trying to convince them on the story, try to educate them. The reality is not every customer is meant to be a customer, right? It's a lot of like you have to figure out who actually cares about this problem enough to pay for your product, focus on them, and then everyone else will kind of follow eventually, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. Early believers, what do people call that? Early adapters? Yeah, early
adopters.
adapters. Yeah. So like when you're crossing the chasm, I think that's the proper startup term. So the chasm or the gap there, you need those people who are passionate in terms of changing the existing behaviors, like looking like visionary leaders, right? And like you mentioned, they're not like some people don't believe what you're building right now, which is I think completely okay. And you should like spend your time, because time is the most valuable asset that we all have, on the better prospects, better, qualified leads. So I
Yeah.
think that's what it boils down.
I have
So
a funny little story.
go ahead.
I met a CRO recently, and
Hmm.
we were in the final stage of our deal, and we presented the pricing to him. We were just talking through the pilot criteria and how it went, and he basically ended the call with, "Well, with this money, why can't we just buy our whole team a bottle of wine? Could just buy every rep a bottle of wine, and that would eat them up on the calls as well, right? Wouldn't that do the job?" Right? And I just like as soon as I heard that, just like shut down the call right there. I was like, we're good. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. If you guys ever want to talk again, happy to connect back in the future. That's literally it, right? And there are people like that out there, and I
Yeah,
think you have to be like you have to just stand your ground. Don't be afraid of losing the deal. Discovery is all about finding good customers, people that will stick with you long term. It's you're not trying to convince anyone, right?
I think we all feel that, natural or organic flow in our conversations with our best customers. So that's what you're coming at. So sometimes like we move deals because, oh, this is a fancy company. Like we want it, we want to like make this happen. Like you
Yeah.
mentioned, um, it sounds like one of our, sales coaches, he used to like, I mean, he still tells me when he first started as an SDR, he was like, I bought myself a chess clock. Okay. So I was like, and every 30 seconds, I was just stopping there and try to, gauge the room, gauge the interest, like understand when I'm on the phone, like, is it all good? So like, it's so important to qualify people and asking the right questions rather than like having 5, 6, 7 meetings or going to the C level and having this, because it is a big value for both parties, and especially for startups I think it's a much bigger opportunity because you get excited, you'll need more money than like those big enterprises. You're trying to grow the business here, so that's why I think this quality first approach, especially with the AI, it's right now crazy, and a lot of people are like,
It's, it's top of mind for everyone right now. And
absolutely.
I think like the best piece of advice that I've gotten from one of our sales coaches, was that discovery is all about shifting your mindset as a seller, right? It's about shifting your mindset from they are evaluating you to you are evaluating them, right? Most people get into this trap of like, oh, they're trying to see if we fit the bill. They want to make sure we fit their pricing. They want to make sure like we have all the features they want. But in reality, it's you have to shift your mindset, and it's more like, hey, does this customer fit your requirements, right? And
Yes,
obviously, the trick is doing that while also showing the customer that empathy and showing them that you care about the problems that they're talking about, while also doing your job and make sure you're qualifying for what you need, right? So it's just this balance. It's this balancing act, and it takes time and practice and dedication. That's the only.
absolutely. Interesting. Like when we one complimentary story while you were like talking. So we hear Gong, Chorus, like these type of tools a lot, right? So if a prospect, I ask them, hey, what do you do right now for coaching? If they keep telling me, hey, I watch, let's say, recordings, and then I go deeper, right? Qualification is all about like extracting the right stuff. So there are like two paths here. Either they say, hey, I watch these recordings, and I'm asking like, how many recordings can you watch every week? Then the real answer is starting to come out. oh, it depends. If I have time, I'll watch a lot. And they say I drop comments. I'm like, okay, how many comments you're looking at? If we check, the meetings happened last week, how many comments did you drop from a coaching perspective rather than great job, Rock? So which says, okay, good, but what am I gonna do, right? And then they realize. So there's this like realization moment. They're like either, hey, I love not watching my recording. So that's my jam. This is how I coach my people. But also
Yeah.
then there's other people where you organically start resonating. They're like, oh, actually, yeah, I really want to kind of coach, but I can't do anything. And I realize that I'm not checking anything. I'm just paying a lot for a fancy note taker tool or recording tool right now, but I don't know what am I going to do. So when it's that realization, it's perfect. But when they keep like, saying, oh, I mean, it's great that I have this tool. If something happens, I'll check. And if they don't believe that,
Mhm.
if they don't have that mindset, it's an uphill battle. Like it's so hard to win them. So it's
Yeah.
basically qualification and the value. And maybe with these challenges, I want to ask you something. How fast, because also we received a question from Christopher. He was asking, how fast a leader can adapt, Hyperbound into their team. So how does that, process look like?
Yeah, that's a great question, Chris. Yeah, so Hyperbound, our process usually can take as little as like a week to a week and a half to just get fully set up, right? We're talking like building all the different bots for your different personas, like building the different scorecards to evaluate your reps calls. So setting all of that up, if you want like a high quality setup, can take about like a week or a week and a half max. We've rolled Hyperbound out to like 200, 250 reps within like a week or two. So yeah, I mean, and that process is getting shorter and shorter each day because we're just automating that process down. So at least on the Hyperbound side of the house, that's the timeline.
I mean, time is the most valuable thing we have, and I'm pretty sure, Hyperbound team is gonna make that pretty automated or maybe a self-service type of stuff. Are you guys planning to,
We already so the thing is the 1 to 2 weeks is really just to like make sure everything's perfect, right? Like it is self-serve, like 80% of the platform self-serve. And there's the 20% where we just have to train you and make sure you understand how to build high quality personas, high quality scorecards. So that's the part that takes a little longer to just get you like fully trained on how to use it. But outside of that, like once you
Hmm.
become expert on building these things, like it's all self-serve, so you can just do it on your own without us
Okay.
involved.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I think people love flexibility. That's what I've been seeing. Even like larger teams, they are moving into, hey, just give me one onboarding session and let me explore myself. But yeah,
So
we're
like
hearing a
I don't
lot
know
of.
if you saw like Kevin Dorsey's post recently. Kevin Dorsey's team over at Finally has been
Hmm.
using Hyperbound, and they actually built 343 bots on Hyperbound recently.
Wow,
Yep. And when they started, it was just a couple. Like the first week and a half is just like we helped them build 12, 13 bots or so. And then they just kind of went on their own after that. And now they have 343. So it gets easier as you go.
that is crazy. That is crazy. Yeah, I think definitely there's a huge play in SaaS tools like us in terms of like being able to self-serve. People love that. That's what we keep hearing. And I want to switch the gears because this interesting thing that I keep hearing or keep hearing from a question perspective, like there's this AI impact, and everyone's like half of the population. They're more, "Hey, is it gonna take over the world?" Type of, more dystopian feelings. So, are you guys like, I mean, coming across these type of objections too? Like, hey, what? Like, I mean, not definitely, not from a standpoint where this thing gonna replace us, but are
Yeah.
they kind of feel fear of being kind of left out that not trained with AI or not utilizing AI? Does that
Ah,
make sense?
got it. Yeah, so definitely I'm seeing that everywhere on the market. Every leader I talk to, there's some sort of AI initiative. They're all on their toes a little bit because the game with sales is it's constantly evolving, right? As soon as one company starts using a different process, then their competitors are going to start following suit, and you have to because you have to keep up with the times, right? And so there's just this like I think there's definitely this urgency that I'm seeing in the market. for AI, and there's a huge appetite. Budgets are opening up for AI again as well. But yeah, I think there's a lot to choose from out there. That's the most difficult part, right? I can tell you this, I have at least 10 friends building AI SDRs right now, right? AI that replaces your SDR. But I can also tell you, I know 50 people that have tried all of those and none of them have worked for them, right? And I'm not saying that that's not going to change. It might change in the near future faster than we think, but I think it's a little too early to jump on that hype train, in my opinion, of AI is going to replace salespeople. I'm an AI engineer. My co-founder is a machine learning engineer. We can tell you from a technical perspective, it's far,
It
right?
is, yeah. No, I totally feel you. A lot of people like kind of curious about this question, and most of the times they love talking about it. The reason is I'm like this is my whole PhD topic when I was working on end-to-end AI projects. A lot of people still we are barely handling text requests, like start chatting with a chatbot on your website. So you ask for questions, deep questions, let me connect you to a human being. So there will be some portions that we're gonna automate for sure, and I think some domains will be faster in terms of adapting this. So there's I think more a domain specific question, but I think your question is totally valid, and I'm always telling people you should learn how to work with AI based tool or AI tools. And I give this example, like I think we are still pretty young, both of us, but like once this Microsoft Excel, or Word, whatever, people started getting certifications. They were like, oh, I'm a certified Excel user, something. I think people are gonna become like certified AI users, let's say certified
HR.
Hyperbound users, certified Spiky
Exactly.
users.
Yeah, yeah.
So
In
they're
fact,
gonna learn.
in fact, like we do, that's part of what we do too. Like we certify reps. We've had reps, we've actually had reps certify themselves on Hyperbound and put it on their resume when they're applying for jobs,
I love
right?
it.
Yeah, literally they say like I'm a Hyperbound certified cold caller. Like we've seen, and that's not even something that we've asked these reps to do. It's just something that they just do. So yeah, we're definitely seeing this shift in the market to these new tools and becoming experts in them.
That's crazy, actually. I love it. And, people are getting more and more creative with AI. Seriously, that's the fun part that I like, especially they're using for their own purposes and they're kind of making a
Yeah.
good use of it. So you guys put something really useful for them and they are using it, they are getting value out of it, and they are using it to prove that they're great. It's not like I've watched this online recording or online, training session, recording session, and then I know about sales. It's more like, hey, these kind of people kind of judged me. It's more like my lead code score. So it
Yeah.
might be fun. And
I have a question for you, Burak,
yeah, go
right?
ahead.
Like one of the challenges that I run into, but I've also heard a lot of like from a lot of reps that sell into especially sales tech that I've run into is just how there's such a difference between the way the leaders view the world and the way the frontline managers view the world, and then how the reps view the world, right? Like when you're on the ground doing the dirty work, right? You're seeing what's happening day to day. You're seeing what customers are saying, right? And you understand what you need, right? Say, and then there's the frontline managers who are like getting this like firsthand feedback. But then there's like the CRO who's like multiple layers outside of that, who was kind of who was maybe like was a seller back in their own day, like 10 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Pre-pandemic, right? And so there's this always disconnect. Like these CROs are like, well, back in the day, I just had to make a couple calls and it was so easy to close deals. Or, I wasn't scared of the phones back in the day. Why is like my 20-year-old Gen Z rep scared of the phones? Well, times have changed, man. Like it's not the same world that we used to live in. So I'm sure you guys run into that at Spiky as well. So how do you guys change the way you do discovery when you're talking to different leaders?
That is a very important topic because and I think this kind of boils down to one of the questions I was asking you, like one of the biggest hurdles or challenges around integrating AI and kind of proving the value to different levels. Because right now everyone is like, okay, AI, chat GPT, that's what they associated immediately. But then like like you mentioned, SDR loves it. Let's say, hey, I want to use this, and then decision maker comes and says, why do we need this? What am I gonna get out of this? I think there's like our approach is basically multifaceted here, like mainly twofold. So we have different value propositions for different people because CRO, from your perspective, even like VP of sales, sales managers, they care about different stuff. So for example, when sales managers use us, they care about more like individual statistics, but in a holistic view. Say, hey, this is my weekly performance. Then like more VP of sales, they are trying to understand like how the teams are doing overall. Like maybe my like US sales team, my I don't know, like MENA region team. So they're trying to understand different big pictures. CRO, they're more like forecasting and overall, are we hitting our quotas or goals? So what are like some biggest hurdles here? So they're looking for more from a big perspective. So they don't care about recordings. Like they never go to recordings. Even like VP of sales, it's very rare most of the times if they need to understand something. And I think, especially in this environment, for an enterprise to become AI ready, or maybe like a mid-sized business,
Mhm.
from a seller perspective, your job is to clear the ROIs for different personas.
Yeah.
From a buyer perspective, you should have a clear goal. Like you should do your own qualification, actually. That's what I tell people. I'm like telling them, why do you need to use us? What is the biggest problem? And it's basically happening in that qualification call when you're chatting with that prospect. You ask the right questions, they give the right answers, and then you have this aha moment. They're like, oh, we definitely need this. We've been suffering this, and everyone in my team is right now talking about it. So you have this aha moment, but you have to do the right things from both perspective. Sometimes enterprise is not ready or the buyer is not ready. Sometimes you are not the right solution, and you got to feel that. You got to
Yeah.
ask these questions to make sure it's felt in the right way.
It's one of the ways that we kind of solve this problem at Hyperbound is I've actually been developing this over a couple months, but it's basically we have a library of every persona, right? That I practice on, like both Athol and I practice on these. We have like library of CROs, we have a library of
Mm-hmm.
sales, library of sales managers, and then SDRs, AEs, CSMs. We've got like basically personas for everyone on Hyperbound. And like anytime, let's have a call with the big CRO. I'll just jump into my CRO library, right? Get a couple reps.
Yeah,
Or I'll jump into my VP of sales library. So it's just, I think that's really cool. Like the ability that I have to do that now. It always, even though like we're the ones that built the platform, it still shocks me that we're even able to do this in the first place. It's
I
exciting.
think, yeah, it's very exciting. Like, because that I think will give you a lot of confidence.
Yeah.
Like if you basically maybe like do 5 sessions, 10 sessions or something really quick, it's gonna like sharpen your knowledge, sharpen your confidence, and you're gonna show up there like fully
Gets you in the
confident.
mind state. Because let's say like I just talked to an SDR yesterday, right? And now I'm talking to that SDR CRO today, right? My mind state needs to shift completely,
Yes,
right? And
yes.
getting yourself in that mind state is just really hard, like when you just jump into the call, right? And I think that's a big part of like what this has been helping me with is just getting into the mindset.
Yeah, getting into the mindset, like one of our sales advisors say the same thing for sure. It's more like mindset game, right? So you have to be in that mindset to sell the right thing, to sell the right people, like talking to a CRO versus VP of sales, like all different. And with that being said, I know we're kind of, approaching our end time, but I want to shift the conversation around. I want our audiences to get, I think we discuss a lot of golden nuggets throughout the webinar. Hopefully that's same for everyone. But I wanted to understand like what are some important advices you would give to especially sales leaders looking to implement AI solutions. You mentioned talking about ROIs, but you never, I think, clarify like what are some ROIs they will get out of Hyperbound. Maybe we can keep this specific to Hyperbound in terms of advices, but you can keep it generic too. So, what are some important advices those sales leaders should think about to implement AI in their organizations.
Yeah. Also, by the way, I don't know if the rest of you guys are seeing this
There's a
camera issue on my.
flickering going on a little bit.
Yeah, I'm just trying to reconnect. But
It's all
uh,
good.
meanwhile, what I was trying, so you're asking about like ROI, right? Like what, as a sales leader, like what is the ROI that I can expect from a tool like Hyperbound,
That is
right?
correct.
Yeah, so I think that's a great question, right? So one, you mentioned like a lot earlier in this call is ramp time, right? If I have like 150 reps and I just launched this new product, how do I get all 150 of my reps on the same page selling this product at a high clip, right? How do I do that? How do I roll out new messaging? Like let's say I made a tiny tweak to this messaging. How do I communicate that to all 150 of my reps so they're all doing it every single day on the sales floor, right? That's the type of thing that we help you with, right? Because normally so much of that would be lost through communication, like through the different layers. But with having a tool like this in place, it's a lot more streamlined, that communication process. And the other big thing outside of like ramp time and product messaging rollout, I think it's just like getting your reps. It's actually really just understanding how you're getting your reps confident on handling their objections, really being able to handle every scenario they might run into, and then you're not burning leads in the process, right? I think that's something that's super underrated. Your marketing team is working the hell out of those leads, and the last thing you want is your sales team just ruining them, right?
Absolutely. No, marketing people, they're doing crazy work that I would probably never understand how they're achieving that. Seriously, like all these like lead gen tactics, lead magnets, like,
Yeah.
oh, I saw Brock was interested this, potentially he's also interested this. They combine a lot of stuff. There's a lot going on, but
The thing is, if you do
definitely,
the math, every lead is actually comes with a price, right?
yes.
But leaders just forget about that. It's like, oh, it's just a marketing lead, right? Well, you know how much effort it took, how much nurturing it took to get that person to come into the door, right? And just to come into a discovery call with this unprepared rep who's just gonna ruin it all, right?
Yeah,
And
user acquisition costs, right, are pretty high from an advertisement standpoint. Like,
exactly. And that's why I always say like CAC, like our product at the end of the day, that if you're talking about like true, just like pure executive metrics, it's CAC. We lower CAC. That's what
yeah,
Hyperbound.
okay, that is like, I think, pretty much to the point, so they can immediately resonate it. And I know we have like a few minutes left here. Overall, I really enjoyed. I think we dive into a lot of coaching related, sometimes myths or sometimes like the frequently asked questions, etc. So we covered a lot. So we answered two questions there already, but anything else you want to add, Sai? Anything else you want to, end up or tell to our audiences because they might watch this as well as
Yeah.
like offline.
So I guess
So,
we can end with this on both our ends. Like what, Barack, like we obviously talked about a lot of different things. What do you think is like the biggest takeaway for the audience here? Like and let's go with like we're talking about discovery here, right? So if I'm a rep and I want to get better at my discovery, what's the biggest takeaway from this conversation?
all right. So I'm gonna answer this question from an individual contributor, like rep AE perspective, as well as like more team manager perspective. So I think if you're the rep, you're always looking for much better skills, right? So you need a tool like Hyperbound if you want to practice. Sorry, if you want to improve yourself, you need to practice. That's, I think, a no-brainer thingy. Where we come into play, that's like why I'm passionate about, because as an engineer, Spiky enables me to be a better seller because I learned like understanding the customer much better, asking the right questions, and also monitoring my communication skills in real life. Sometimes when people object you, I realize, for example, I got so excited or like I want to really answer, but maybe I just should sit back and kind of relax and understand them much better. So all these, I think, pieces helping you from the helping from the sorry like stepping in terms of upskilling yourself. You need to spend time on these stuff. This is like from an SDR or like people on the trenches. But from the manager perspective, my biggest, advice for all these people, I know it's hard. The market is so saturated from time to time. You're seeing a lot of stuff popping up. Like you need to do your own qualification first. Like ask yourself, what does my team need? And our biggest hypothesis, I think both companies, we are so invested in coaching aspect. And this has been a very this has been like an underserved area for many years. Not a lot of people believe the fact that I should coach, I should upskill my people. They were always focused on, let me hire a new one, let me hire a new person. So now you have an ability to make your sellers super sellers with a game changing technology stack. So
Yeah.
qualify yourself and invest in coaching, because that is, I think, the future. A lot of companies jumping on this train. So
Yeah.
that's probably how I would end it.
I think my main takeaway also is just discovery is like as a seller, it's the one of the hardest, but most one of the hardest things to do, but also one of the things that can make you really stand out as a seller. There aren't many sellers out there that are absolute beasts at discovery. So
Yeah,
if you can really get your discovery skills to a certain point, like you are better than like 90% of the sellers out there already, right? So
absolutely.
that's where the sales, that's where they say, right, deals are made, deals make or break at discovery. And
Yes,
so that, yeah, you got, that's where all the time and effort needs to go in.
90%, I think, of that happens in discovery. Seriously, if the right people in your funnel, you're gonna have 10x easy time to sell more folks. Seriously. It's all about like how you create that funnel. Right people, right deals, more revenue. That's what I've been discussing with a lot of the leaders.
Yeah, well, that wraps it up real well.
Yeah, I think so. Sai, thank you so much for your time, man. Really appreciate it. I hope it was like helpful for our audience as well. But this was seriously really, really informative. And I appreciate your time, and we'll definitely distribute the recording for the people who need it. And we'll chat soon. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time again.
Awesome, man. Appreciate your time as well. This was great. Thank you.
Absolutely. Take care.
Bye.
Bye bye.